I think the younger generation can help the older generation stay innovative. The older generations, I feel like oftentimes you can get set in your ways if you've been doing something a certain way a long time. And so I feel like generations now are much more open-minded. And of course that has its pitfalls, but in general it's a good thing to be open-minded if you are a role model. And I feel like everyone to some degree, whether you want to be or not, whether you're a good role model or not, you are someone's looking up to you, you know? So I think it's this constant understanding of like, okay, there's people that's gonna be watching what I'm doing. I may have little cousins or family members that want to emulate what I'm doing.
2025, a Gallup poll found that 72% of Generation Z prefers learning through interactive experiences rather than through traditional lectures. How have you found that, and is that something you agree with and believe? Welcome, one and all, and thank you for joining another time. I want to ask you, as I always usually do, to like, comment, and share this live as we are going throughout the area and literally across the world on the various social media platforms. Wherever you're joining from, I really want to say welcome to you to Change Your Life podcast and another edition. I want to remind you, and it's important to know that we are in worship every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. And I'd like you to come along to what will be a life-changing service. It will bring impact to your way, and you will not be the same again, I can guarantee, because God is in the business of changing lives for the positive. This month, we are dealing with a new subject, and the subject we're dealing with is families and how important families are on a whole. And we're going to be looking at various angles and aspects of it. This week, we're specifically going to look at the generations, and we're going to focus on the younger generations because we have Generation Z and we have millennials and different generations. So I want to be purposeful in picking up and hearing what the generations have to say so that we can learn and ponder and understand from the perspective of Generation Z and the millennials. And so joining us today is a really dear brother, and he is someone that is doing good things. He really is, and a good role model. And so he's here and he's joined us in the studio, Patrick Moses. So great to have you here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How is life in general?
I'm doing well. Life is good overall, man. I can't complain. God is good. Family's good. So yeah, I just in a constant state of like elevating or at least, trying to. So can't complain.
Awesome. I think it's so good to see positive role models.
Mm,
And I'm regarding you um, and myself, but
mm,
yourself as well as a positive role model, particularly in a atmosphere and a generation where not always positive role models are out there.
mhm,
I look at the rappers and the sort of trap music that's happening, and I look at the role models that people are aspiring to and being magnetized to. And though they are talented, some of them, and gifted, the lifestyle and role models are not um, what we would say, is positive, and especially as believers, it is not really role models we should be sort of gravitating to. What's your thoughts in terms of that, being a role model and looking at role models in terms of how we can be positive in our outlook?
hmm. I'd say first, like I agree. There's a lot of kind of, for lack of a better word, mess like out there, and it's a lot to decipher from. So if you're young growing up, like I think about like when I was in high school, even in college, there's, you know, what your friends are listening to, maybe even what some older cousins or what they're listening to, what they're watching, you can't help but to gravitate to it. And being a Christian for a young person is not cool per se, you know? It's it's kind of like trying to find that balance, like, if you are a role model, and I feel like everyone to some degree, whether you wanna be or not, whether you're a good role model or not, you are someone's looking up to you, you know? So I think it's this constant understanding of, like, okay, there's people that's gonna be watching what I'm doing. I may have little cousins or family members that wanna emulate what I'm doing. Like, is this something that I would be, like, proud to be like, "Okay, they got that from me," you know? Or am I doing something that's gonna kind of lead them astray and put them on a path that's like, you know, you really shouldn't be doing that. So I think it's just kind of understanding, like, for me, I always say and I set, like I'm corny in the sense that I set reminders on my phone. I have one that's like, "Your life is bigger than you." So, wow, having that constant reminder of, I'm not just living for me. So, while giving yourself some grace, like, you know, you're human, but people people are looking to you and, you know, you have to be mindful of what you're putting out there in the world, be it social media, be it just your day to day, how you're handling people, talking to them, because there's somebody that's kind of like, all right, he's doing that, and this what it looks like. This is what success look like. Then that's what I'm gonna do too. You know.
Yeah, that's excellent. I really agree with what you're saying. And do you find that you were saying um, at times when you're being positive, it's not always as exciting, you know,
Hmm.
in other people's minds, you know, because we're looking now at these supposed role models that really aren't. And they've got all the exterior stimulation and the things that are on the outside that people gravitate to. But it's really not advisable to take on that kind of lifestyle, the fast life.
Hmm.
It's certainly not a positive way to sort of go. And because of that, they have a bigger following, and those who are doing positive have oftentimes a less following, which is really disappointing. So I suppose what I'm really asking is, as it relates to yourself, how do you stay disciplined and not, pulled away by some of those supposedly exciting role models, as it were? And of course, we have fun as believers. I want to say that it's not that our lives are boring, but I believe we're balanced, which is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you basically, to answer your question, you basically hit it, like balance, you know, understanding and boundaries, like understanding that I can have fun, but there's only but so far I can go, you know? Like, one, we all have our personal convictions, and then we all have just general, like, shared convictions. You know what's too far. You know when you're kinda towing the line of, right, "Alright, this is past fun, and this is getting a little bit this is I'm starting to engage in more sinful behavior rather than just having fun." So I think for me, a lot of it is just about understanding, one, that I'm not who my friends say I am, who, you know, the world says I am. I'm not even who my parents necessarily say I am. I'm who God says I am. So, and in understanding that, it's like there's certain things He's called me to do. And if the thing that I'm doing on my day to day, or if the way that the people that I'm inspired by are pulling me away from that, then I have to reevaluate how much time and attention I give them, like, from the music I'm listening to podcasts I'm listening to, whatever you're taking in, the people you're hanging out with. It's like, if you see yourself struggling in your walk every time you engage with a certain thing or certain people, you may have to kinda reevaluate how much time you give them.
Excellent. Wow. I love that. Do me a favor, walk me back over your journey. How was your journey growing up and family life and spiritual life and college and that sort of thing? Give me a brief overview of how life was in your journey getting to this point.
I think for me, like, I've always grown up in the church, so
Okay, that's great.
and sometimes I used to joke with some of my friends and say, "I wish I was somebody who did not grow up in the church and came to God later on," you know, kinda experiences the world and stuff. Because I feel like growing up in the church, there's always this kind of conviction that doesn't allow you to really go but so far. So I think for me personally, there was sometimes I would have this longing of like, am I missing out? You know? So, but at the same time, I am grateful of the values that my parent, like, set, and family is big in general, like, in my household, like, my little cousins, they're basically like my brothers and sisters,
Wow.
like, I'm an only child technically, but, like, my mother raised, like, her younger sister, and we've always had a very close-knit family, and one of the things that they've instilled in us is, like, we had fun with them, like, they would teach us things, there would be boundaries, but it was always, like, there was an environment where you felt like you can go to them, and if maybe you didn't feel like you can go to your parents, you can go to your aunt, you can go to your older sister, and there would always be that kind of, like, intermediate person that would, like, bridge it, whatever, help you guys reconcile, kind of, they're
Yeah,
like,
good.
"This is what they're feeling, I know what you're saying, like, maybe you guys should have a conversation catered around here," I feel like there was a space where it wasn't always you against this person, like mom against son so.
Yeah, I understand. They say it takes a village to raise a child.
Mhm.
Yeah. My journey actually, I was raised in church like yourself, but left for a period of time and then, rejoined church. So I had that experience of both sides, as it were. And the side of God is definitely the better side to be on, I can tell you that. But we really honor and respect your mother as well, Elder Moses. What a great woman she is, and having raised you and done what she did, that's awesome. So you went to college.
Yeah,
What did you study?
I studied law.
Oh, yeah.
I always felt like I would go
What
into
type of law?
politics. So, initially, it was criminal law because I went to a criminal justice, college, but then I kind of, like, so really, it was law and sociology that I was studying, but as time went on, I kind of started gearing more towards, like, political law and,
Wow.
'cause politics always kind of fascinated me. I didn't become a history buff until more recently, but I've always just been interested in, the way politicians talk, how to just the whole nature of it. It was just always fascinating, so I wanted to be an attorney so I can eventually go into politics. That just seemed like
Sure.
the route that they took.
Yeah, yeah. Some of the best politicians actually began
Mhm.
as lawyers or as some sort of legal framework.
Yeah.
So that's excellent, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
I did. I enjoyed the class, and I think what I enjoyed most, I enjoyed the, philosophy that you had to apply in, like, law. Even, like, the LSAT, it's all philosophy, and I think I've always took to that. Like, I like kind of, like, being challenged with, like, sort of existential questions and stuff like that. Um But once I had to do the actual work, like, I started interning and stuff, and I was like, this is not what I thought it was gonna be." A lot of
Oh.
paperwork, like, I'm like, "Okay." So, and around that time, God was revealing, I think, certain gifts in me that I didn't know I had, and I kinda started, like, diving deeper into that, and the deeper that I went into that, the more it pulled me away from my plan going
Sure.
into law, so to speak. So, I made the shift directly after college. I had already took the LSAT, knew what what college I was gonna go to. I mean, not college, law school I was gonna go to, and then, like, right before, like, crunch time, I was kinda like, "Alright, I hear you, Lord. I don't understand it. Let me just make the switch." So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well done. That's great. I want to speak about bridging the communication gap
Mhm.
between the younger generation and the maturer generation.
Mhm.
There was a research actually um, that was done, and it says that 58% of young people feel misunderstood by older generations. Um, what's your thoughts about that in terms of young people being misunderstood?
I can definitely see that because one, we're living in a different world, right? Like, social media, even prior 2013, social media wasn't really a thing, and that was when I graduated high school, and I remember, um, in middle school, we all we had was MySpace, and then high school, Facebook had became a thing, and so I feel like that's when we really like, the world really started getting a taste of, social media, and it kind of started to become, like, very ingrained in our everyday life, and nowadays, that's essentially what this new generation and some of my generation is still experiencing, and I think our parents, because they didn't have to deal with that, there may be some things that they just don't understand, so a lot of things get kinda lost in translation. It's like, "Well, why are you always on, Instagram? Why are you always on your TikTok?" And it's just like, for them, it's kinda like, this is just what we do, their whole world is on that, people are barely going outside, you're just here, you're talking to your friends through social media, you're seeing the world through social media in a sense, and it's kind of building up your view of what life should be and what the world should look like and how people should interact. So I think it's you're just kind of seeing like those two opposing sides like trying to reconcile with each other and figure they just don't understand like,
Sure.
you know.
So you're saying it's coming from such a different perspective
Mhm.
that the maturer generation failed to recognize
Mhm.
how things may have evolved or changed or developed.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, they may say it's wrong, but to the generations, it's not wrong. It's just different.
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for them, it's just this is just life,
Sure.
and they're not wrong in that it is life. This is, I think the struggle with the 2 generations is for like the older generations are constantly, not everyone, of course, but there's a consistent, back in my day, we did it like this, and it's like, we're not in your day anymore, Things are not run that way, and with the younger generation, it's very much so like I think sometimes we can fail to realize that while the world around us is evolving and it's changing, this we're dealing with the same issues. People were still depressed in the 80s. People were even if they didn't call it depression, people were dealing with the same emotions, we're fighting the same battles. It's just technology and the landscape around it, it's different. So it manifests a little bit differently or you kind of have to deal with it a little bit more different than maybe how you would have before.
That makes perfect sense. How do you think the younger generation can communicate with the older generation without losing their identity?
Mm. I think one, sharing perspective is always important. Like with your younger generation, I feel like you can you can put your parents, or you can put your aunts and uncles or your mentor, whoever it is, you can teach them about, social media. You can teach them the latest trends and stuff like that. Not necessarily so they can be involved in it, but at the very least so they can understand it. So now when they're approaching you, they're not coming from this foreign perspective. They're coming from a little bit more an empathetic and a place of more understanding, I
That's good.
I think that it starts there, like just information sharing on both ends.
Sure. So information going back and forth so that there can be a greater level of understanding.
Mhm.
Um, what traditions or principles do you believe the older generation um, tried to instill or download to the younger generation that you think is valuable?
Mm. For one, I'll say one of the things that you see we're struggling with in modern day society, gender roles.
Yeah,
I feel like that gets a negative connotation now, and it shouldn't because it's biblical. God made Adam and Eve, and they had very specific functions. And throughout the Bible, man has a very specific function, and a woman has a very specific function. It's not to say one is lesser than the other, but we complement each other. And I think nowadays, what you see is there's a group of women who are competing with men, and there's a group of men who are kind of like sitting down, sitting back, and not taking on the responsibility that they should. So I think that's one of the things that the older generations should definitely continue instilling as in their kids and the youth in general. If you're working with kids or something, it's just allowing them to see that it's okay to embrace, you being a man or and her being a woman. Like that's how society, a healthy society should function.
Sure.
So gender roles for sure, and I would say coupled with that, marriage. I think nowadays there's an overwhelming majority of people who say they don't want to get married, but I think they actually do. But I think society has told them you don't need somebody to tether you down or to kind of keep you from being able to explore what life has to offer. Whereas it's like, no, this is a union protected by God, and if you embrace it, you can both build each other up. And the whole point of marriage is to save the institution of family, so it's a very special union. I don't think people realize that anymore. You have people treating their girlfriends or their boyfriends like they would their spouse. And it's like, you can love your girlfriend and boyfriend, all that is fine, but understand there is a difference. Like, you guys have not sanctified that union as of yet. So I think, without going down like a rabbit hole of that, just understanding and respecting, things like that, respecting gender roles, respecting marriage. Those are, two top of mind that I feel like are most valuable and needed in today's culture.
Wow, that's powerful. I absolutely agree. I think that some of these values are being lost and blurred, and as a result of that, you may get a weaker society,
Mhm.
and that's a real issue. So I believe some of that needs to be, addressed and embraced so that we can sort of move forward in that. What are some of the points, I can't say traditions now, but some of the principles you think the older generation can learn from the younger generation? Now, we understand that being a younger person, we're going to learn more
Mhm.
usually from those who are more advanced. They've seen more, they've
Mhm.
been through more, they've experienced more. And so that's just a reality of the situation. However, there are still learning curves
Yeah.
and learning points that can be adopted and actually can help the shelf life as well. I was speaking to or on the phone with two bishops, and um, notable, and one of the things they said on the phone was that the younger generation helps them stay relevant and helps their shelf life and gives them vitality.
Mhm.
So I thought that was quite poignant and interesting in the way that they spoke about it,
Mhm.
because I was really there to learn, but they was also saying their points that they can learn as well. So what just a couple of things you think the older generation may be able to learn or grasp from the younger generation?
One, I think the younger generation can help the older generation stay, um, what's the word? Innovative. The older generations, I feel like oftentimes you can get set in your ways if you've been doing something a certain way a long time. And so I feel like generations now are much more open minded. And of course that has its pitfalls, but in general, it's a good thing to be open minded. It's a good thing to be able to see things from different perspectives. And I think one of the benefits of living in a social media society, you're able to see so many different walks of life. And while it can be information overload at times, what you are being able to pull from that is, okay, they do things like this over here and they do things like this over there. And it allows you to kind of be more, not accepting, but rather empathetic to other people who may be experiencing life in different ways and in different regions of the world. So I think younger people have been able to develop that, and that's something that they can give to some of the older generations to help them not stay so stuck in their ways, and make them a little bit less judgmental, at least come across less judgmental.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I agree. The great Billy Graham actually said that the greatest inheritance that younger people can have is not money or materialism, but actually wisdom and information. So I think it's good when we can have this connectivity where we can really download. But as we're saying here, it's got to be in a manner that we can receive. And not only that, but we've got to sort of make sure we're on the same sort of, network. And I'm saying that because I'm reading a stat here. In 2025, a Gallup poll found that 72% of Generation Z prefers learning through interactive experiences rather than through traditional lectures. How have you found that? And is that something you agree with and believe?
I definitely see that for myself, again, because I'm kind of in this the year that I was born, 95, it's literally the very cutoff year for the millennials. So I'm the very last year of the millennial generation. So I essentially was kind
You're
of the
older than
first year
Yeah.
of, the inception of Gen Z. So I think for me,
So would you say you understand both sides?
I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah, you're in a unique place.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
I do prefer for myself more interactive learning. I think one, people don't want to be spoken to all the time. And also you have to understand, like, in today's culture, because there's everything is so instantaneously, a lot of younger people's attention spans aren't the same as like when our parents
They're very
were
short now,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
extremely.
Because now we're
Mm-hmm.
flicking all over and TikTok, it's all bite-sized,
Yeah.
very quick, yeah.
So that's essentially how your message needs to be. It needs to be bite size, And once you, like, capture someone's attention, you can kind of make them digest the material in maybe bigger portions. But if you're in order to get to that spot first, you
You gotta
have to,
start small.
yeah, and then you can just expand later on.
Yeah.
So,
That's great. Yeah,
mhm.
that's great. So interactive learning is certainly something. I want to ask you something. Titus chapter 2, verse 7 says, "In everything, set them an example by doing what is good." Um, I have some concerns in general. And one of my concerns is the example. We spoke about this earlier, the
Mhm.
examples that are being left for the generation, the younger generation now. There is levels of concern. And really, when I'm looking at the music, the role models, I'm looking at what's now acceptable in the society of today. That is somewhat worrying to me. And what I also find is that we need to have an introspective look because we blame exterior. We blame, opportunity, or we look at, the community we was raised in, or racial influences or social influences, and those do have a part to play. However, th- we're seeing an evolution of an extremely toxic culture. The levels of black males, for example, young black males going to prison,
Mm.
dying early, drug addiction. It's alarming,
Mhm.
and that's something I believe that really needs to be analyzed and looked at. What's your take and your thoughts on it? Um, and how do you think about it? We mentioned earlier, marriage is a tradition that's going. So there is an alarming rate of uh, um, single parented households. I was
Mhm.
raised in one, so there's no look down on that.
Right.
However, that shouldn't really be the aspiration or should be the status quo.
Mhm.
So, what is your thoughts in terms of this culture that's evolving and developing? And it's been in each generation, but I'm seeing an uplift and an increase in the younger generations. What's your thoughts about? Do you agree with that, number one? And number two, what's your thoughts in terms of how that can be addressed?
I definitely agree with that, and you actually touched on the very first thing that I was gonna say, going back to the family unit, that the lack of present fathers used typically in minority communities. I think when you think about, and I don't wanna misquote it, but there is a statistic around that, and it's not just for the Black community, but any community, white communities as well. When you have an absentee parent, you're more than likely to be incarcerated, you're more than likely to be
The stat
impoverished.
goes, yeah,
Yeah, like
pregnancy, the
mhm.
list goes on.
So, like, what
Mental
does that
health issues.
yeah.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? And I think they all bleed into each other. Gender roles, the institution of marriage, they bleed into each other because it's like if you just have again, while it's no knock, God gives single mothers and single fathers the grace to handle their kids, and he'll make up for whatever a child is lost, whatever is missing, but it's not his perfect will. It's not how he designed it. So when you're missing that, oftentimes there's an element in that union that was supposed to be there that now you guys are starting behind the 8 ball. Like, you don't have a father in the household, who is gonna be providing? Men are just naturally more logical, whereas women are a lot more emotional, which is probably why I think God allowed them to carry the child, because they're more nurturing by nature. So I think if you have one without the other, if you just have logic and strictness, but you don't have that nurturing side, then you may get a child that's a bit hard and rough and growing up in an environment that feels kind of cold, versus if you have, on the flip side, if you just have like all nurturing and you just have all kind of like coddling, and you don't have that father to come in and be like, this is how we do things, provide that discipline. Like, yeah, you can cry at this particular time, but now it's time for you to get yourself together and, you know, kind of hold you accountable, so to speak. Like, you need that balance with both parents. And I think that's essentially what we're seeing in our culture. And that's what's being glorified as well. Like, the amount of, people that are just like, this whole social media culture of, women living like men in the sense of like having one night stands, or just
Yeah, if he can do it,
being,
I can do it.
yeah. And
Mhm.
it's kind of, it's just deteriorating, us as a people even more, because it's like, where are the people, where's the village coming around that child and raising them? And I think another thing is boundaries. I feel like you can have a nice structured household, you can, in terms of like having both parents and even like a family around you, but sometimes what I'm seeing, whether it be through friends or even some family members, there's no boundaries with them and the kids. It's like there's some things that I just was not allowed to do with my parents. It was very clear that these are not my friends. They love me, but these are my parents. And it wasn't until I got older where the more
Became a
response.
friend like,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I think that comes with responsibility. It's like with a baby, obviously you wouldn't be like, "Hey, you need to go out and get a job." It's a baby. But as they get older, maybe once they're like 6 or 7, 8, you may start giving them a chores. Hey, I want you at this time every day. I want you to do the dishes. Or I want you to help your dad take out the garbage.
Mhm.
As they get older, you give them more responsibility and you provide more structure around their life. And that kind of like instills something in them, like, okay, this is how things are to be done. Like, I need to get myself in a routine. You're essentially raising them up to like get to a point where they're not dependent on you and they can take care of themselves, utilizing the values that you've instilled in them, and then also understanding that they're their own person. So they're going to take what they learn from you and things that they learn from life, and all that is going to shape them and help them become a productive member of society.
That's brilliant. So going back to the basics really of God, family,
Mhm.
and following biblical principles is going to help us have a better system, a better culture.
For sure.
Because if they throw things at us, if you don't have that system,
Mhm.
then it becomes a real, real problem.
Yeah.
I agree with that actually, and I think that's a really great way of looking at it. And I always tell my son what to look out for and why things are the way they are.
Mhm.
Not everything is on the surface, and we look at these things, and it helps him understand and know. You
Mhm.
know, but again, if I wasn't there, then it may be an angle missed, and likewise, you know, um, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
So you need both
Mhm.
angles, which is very, very essential. So I think that's great principles. What are some of the things spiritually in your mind that young people are struggling with? And what are some of the things that they need help with or support with in general?
You'll see today, like, I don't know if you've seen that stat where, like, it showed that the amount of, Bibles that have been sold, namely among Gen Z men, and I've even seen it in my own life. There's some, like, childhood friends or, like, family friends who are even, like, slightly younger than me that express no interest in learning about God. Now all of a sudden they're buying Bibles and stuff. I think now what you're seeing is this sort of, and it's been there before, but I think now more than ever, giving the state of so much uncertainty and everyone's sort of like anxious about where the world is going on both ends of the spectrum, no matter what aisle you sit on, whether it be politically or culturally. I think you're seeing now this sort of yearning for something bigger than the person and something that can provide them maybe this like this guidance that they at a spiritual level. And I think you're getting a lot of that. Like some people are going about it by way of, the way, the truth, and the life, like seeking out Jesus and seeking out Christ. And there's some people, they may dabble in like other things, but ultimately it's all leading back to we all are we all understand on some level. I won't even say we understand, but there's we all have in us this sort of innate nature to seek out the creator, even if we don't believe that there's a creator or not. I think there's something inside everyone that's kind of like, I know there's something bigger than me. I know, like you hear a lot of people, I hear at least a lot of people saying, I'm trying to find my purpose. And I think what they're really saying is, I know I was created for a reason. I know something or someone had to have created me, but I just can't seem to find my way to them.
So you're saying that the biggest challenge is a sense of void,
Yeah.
where there's a void there, and the gap is being filled
Mhm.
by other elements, sometimes negative elements,
Mhm.
in order to fill that void. But people are searching and on the lookout. So if the church can fill that void,
Mhm.
then we will be able to tap into that sense of emptiness, shall we say,
Mhm.
spiritually, that needs to be addressed. So
Yeah.
that's excellent. We're in 2025, and in 2025, there is tremendously gifted young people,
Mhm.
um, talented young people that just have a lot going for them. We're in the information age.
Yeah.
Everything that we need to find, we can find online. We've now got AI.
Mhm.
Before you probably had to go through books and things of that nature. Now, at the tap of a button,
Mhm.
you can find out anything, literally almost everything that's out there. So, with all these gifts, all this talents, all this information
Mhm.
that's there, what do you think would be good for younger people um, to increase or to maximize, I think is a better word, their gift, their talents, their abilities, and what they have going for them, because they're extremely smart
Yeah.
and gifted
Mhm.
young people, probably more than we've ever seen. And so, what do you think's important for them to sort of maximize what they have?
I think now more than ever with social media and with AI, visibility and being able to just market yourself is far more easier. You don't need a big corporation. You don't need, all the
TV,
Mhm.
yeah.
Like, so you have access to people, which I feel like in the past, that was the struggle. How do I get my product? How do I get me in front of the masses? Now you can do that. But what you have to do is kind of understand, all right, I can do that part. What am I trying to service? Like if you have a gift, it's like, okay, what exactly am I trying to provide to the public? What need am I trying to solve? You know, like if you think about even the, capitalism in and of itself, and now how it's looking, being shaped by AI, it's very much so like,
That's
okay,
excellent. Yeah.
it's it's the person who provides a service to the most amount of people, right? So it's like AI is allowing you to, and of course, there's some good and bad with it, but essentially now it's easier. You don't need a big team behind you. It can handle your administrative work. It can handle like some of the mundane everyday tasks that may have been too time consuming, I think it allows people
You can
to create
systemize,
more.
can't you? You can create
Mhm.
a system that really does it all. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So I think if you, especially if you're in a, whether, and it's not even just if you're in a creative space, but like whether you're a creative or whether you're somebody who, let's say maybe you're trying to provide financial literacy, you now have an avenue to where it can help you build up your business. It'll freeze up a lot of your time. And maybe you're somebody who's not necessarily going down an entrepreneur route or is trying to start your own business. At the very company you are in, it's giving you a way to make yourself even more valuable. Like while it's still in its inception, you can learn how to utilize it, learn how to prompt it so it can help you kind of do your daily task more efficiently, and you can kind of focus your energy elsewhere on maybe bigger goals or bigger things that you have, for the company or for your career.
That's excellent. Especially what you mentioned about AI. I think that's really big. And I know that, as you said, there's concerns about it, but there's a lot of positive as well.
Mhm.
And the traditional jobs or businesses that we see today, some are going to become obsolete. And
Mhm.
I think it's important for the younger generation to know that and be ahead of the curve,
Mhm.
because in 10 years' time, what may be a very viable job today might not be tomorrow.
Yeah.
I was speaking to someone who works for Amazon, and there's robots all over the Amazon warehouses now,
Mhm.
and they're employing people um, to be able to operate the robots, and they're doing the whole processing in these huge warehouses,
Mhm.
and manpower's being curtailed because obviously the robots don't have days off. They work
Yeah.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Mhm.
and just, need to stop for maintenance issues. There's no lunch break. There's no holidays.
You don't
There's
gotta
no,
pay them
yeah,
healthcare.
you don't have to pay out. Yeah. So, it's good for younger people to look at those sort of things. And
Mhm.
also, as you mentioned, systemizing your business and seeing how you can make it so efficient. Now you can get online agents and PAs and different things, so you can
Mhm.
really. So opportunity is at its greatest
Yeah.
that it has ever been.
Mhm.
As you said, you don't need to be signed up by a major record label. You
Mhm.
can actually go on YouTube and sing, and you could be picked up and get millions of views, and there you go.
Mhm.
Then they'll come looking for you. So I think the opportunities are great for young people, and I believe that they're going to do fantastic as long as they can stay tuned in, plugged in, and stay plugged into God as well.
Yeah.
I've got two more questions. How do you overcome peer pressure?
Mm.
Peer pressure that's pulling you and trying to lean you to do certain things and behave a certain way and spend a certain way and keep up with the quote unquote Joneses. What's the best method to overcoming that angle?
Pastor always says it, you have to be delivered from people. Like,
Amen.
there's honestly no way around it. If you are living your life, and I keep going back to social media, but it's like I said, it's most people's everyday life. I think, there's some people that just they're posting for likes, they're posting for views, and it's like everything from the places that they go to the things that they wear, it's about how is this gonna be received on social media? And these people don't even really know you, you know? So I think it's about taking a step back and understanding God did not create us to to please each other. He created us to serve him, and in serving him, we will be in service to one another. We'll do things like I think about the Ten Commandments. They're not just a list of rules for us, just to abide by. They're more of it's more of a structure for how we, deal with each other. You know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. That's how I handle you, how I commune with you properly and protect you. And I think we're kind of confusing the two in terms of we're so focused on pleasing people that we're not focused on actually bringing truth to people, bringing Jesus to people, because we care about how, and being compassionate is always good, but sometimes we care more about how people feel about us and about what we're gonna say and how we're living our life, that we forget that the ultimate goal is to bring people to Christ, and you bring him to Christ by living a Christ-like. And if you're living like Christ, living that narrow, taking that narrow road, there's always gonna be naysayers. There's always gonna be people who, more oftentimes than not, who have something negative to say about you. Because we as human beings, I think we just have this, we have an aversion to truth. Like, we don't like accepting the things that are uncomfortable, even if it's right for us. It's very much so like, well, that could have been said better. That could have been done. Like, I don't like how that made me feel. So
Sure.
there's just it speaks to this constant balance of how do I feel versus how it should be or how I should be.
Sure. That makes sense. Let me say this as well. I want you to tell me your opinion on this. It's quite important. How do parents get their child to open up? Because at times there is a lot of separation. A lot of houses now, young people come home, go straight to the bedroom. Okay. There's not enough interaction happening. There's not enough openness. And some of what they're struggling with, they're not sharing with their parents. They may share it with friends, but not with parents. How do you believe there can be a safe space that is opened where young people feel comfortable at communicating their thoughts, issues, beliefs, or what they're dealing with?
Mhm.
Um, what do you believe the best method is?
I think one, it starts with, again, like how we spoke about before, once they get to a certain age, like, you can start building a friendship. You can't do it too early on because, a child has
So
the
how do you deal with it
opportunity.
before you build the friendship?
I think it happens, like, if I'm thinking, so as you're speaking to that, I'm thinking about a high school student. That's where my mind automatically went to, just because that's kind of the time where it's a lot happening all at
Sure,
once,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah.
So
The pressures are coming.
I
Yeah,
think once they're in high school, wow, that's where you are starting to their whole life you've been slowly building a friendship, only they don't know it. You've been doing it by way of being their structural guide, but the older they get and the more responsibility they take on, and every child is different, the more you see their level of maturity and being led by the Holy Spirit, like, you can kind of understand, okay, they're at a place where we can have this conversation. Like,
sure.
I can talk to them about this, while maintaining boundaries within our relationship. So I think as they get older and as you learn your child or your whoever you're mentoring, it's like, okay, let me kinda spoon feed them, like, certain things, and as they get to a place where they can understand more and take in more information and be able to process it, I can continue giving them more, and with that, you're already building up a space where you guys can share information. Like, I think about how my parents, like, when I was raised, like, now I can talk to my mother pretty much anything. Now, there's some things I don't, just not because I don't trust her, but more because I may have man issues that her as a woman, she doesn't understand. But my point is, we've gotten to a place because she provided that structure, and along the way, as she saw me grow and as she helped me essentially grow and made me become more mature, she was able to share more of her life with me. And in turn, I was able to share more of my life. So I think it starts there, like, kind of sharing your experiences, what you're faced with, what you're dealing with right now, what they're dealing with right now, and creating that level of trust where it's like, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you what you're doing wrong. I'm not even necessarily here to tell you what you're doing right. I'm here to listen, and I'm here to I genuinely want to understand what's going on with you. Because I think about all these kids that are committing like suicide or struggling with anxiety and depression, and it's just like, you know, how do you feel? How do you get to that place where you feel like you don't have anybody, or even if you do know you have people, you feel like the alternative is much better or much easier. I would have to think it has something to do with, just feeling like, wow, even if there's people that may love you, they just will never understand, what you're dealing with. So I think it's
Yeah.
coming from a place of understanding.
Understanding. And it's a unique balance in that because as the parent, you're the guide and you bring discipline and
Mhm.
accountability, but at the same time you want openness. And
Yeah.
at times it can appear as a contradiction
Mhm.
and an oxymoron. Um, but that's the unique thing. And I also believe um, allowing them to have positive people around them where perhaps they may speak to some of those people around them more their age or more people that they can relate to is good because as long as they're positive, they're
Mhm.
going to get positive advice, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which is very essential and important as well. This has been great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it for coming in. This has been absolutely great. We've been dealing with this episode on family, dealing with connectivity and how important it is for everyone to see the power of family and how essential it is and young people being connected to the generations above them, either role models, leaders, parents, or however it is. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate it. Again, I'm sending out this special invitation to come to Sunday services. The information is on the screen, and I'm welcoming you to come along and be blessed, be impacted. Why not contact the ministry? You can see the information also, and you can make a call, and they'll be ready for you before you come, and we will gladly receive you for our Sunday service. I also want to encourage those who have been blessed by the podcast to seed and to give. It helps us to keep this going and allows us to really come into your home and be a great blessing. So I'd like you to consider that. The QR code is on the screen and you can give whatever is on your heart. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege. Bless you. And we will see you next week for another episode. Bless you.
It is our desire to keep you posted on what's happening here at Changing Lives Christian Center. So please pull out your smart devices so you can take notes and save dates.
Your 2024 year-end statements are now available via email. Statements will be issued from January 26 to March 30th. Email your request to infodesk@clccministries.com or sign up at the info desk in the lobby.
There's another in the fire.
please join Pastors Paul and Yasmin Mitchell and our CLCC church family as we celebrate our new members during service. And then join us after service in our fellowship hall as we spend time with all new members.
Do you need prayer? It doesn't matter for what. CLCC is here to stand in prayer with you and for you. Let's take it to the Lord, for He cares about all of the needs you have. God has commanded us to always pray and not faint. His word declares that when we pray, believing, that He will always answer. So join CLCC's prayer leaders Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. That's right, 30 minutes for prayer and encouragement to start your day. We look forward to you calling into our conference prayer line, 646-769-9900. Access code 82551. Remember, come and dial believing. The Master awaits your prayer request.
Join CLCC in remembrance of current world events.